Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Short and to the Point on the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Jessica Kleinschmidt here. I'm exhausted. We're at the end of the season, and I'm exhausted, but we're almost there, and I can rot in bed for 2 days before I get back to just concentrating on the podcast. It's going to be great. It's going to be amazing. Speaking of amazing, I have such a fun guest today. I'm sure you're following the account Art But Make It Sports on Twitter and on Instagram. Combined on both of those accounts, by the way, he possesses 716,000 followers. LJ Rader is the brilliant mind behind this, combining both sports and art, and to show there truly is a piece of art for everything sports related. I think it's kind of amazing. So we talked about how this came to fruition, his love for art, and of course his love for baseball. Also, he has a couple of Oakland A's on his fantasy team. Here's our chat. All right, there's a lot to go over because prepping for this is really interesting. I like to think I'm a creative person. I don't know if I'm artistic, but LJ, for you, it's interesting. You said this quote, "I like viewing art through a sports lens," which is really cool. A lot of people would think you would start with sports, but then go into art. It sounds like with this account, you start with art and then bring sports into it.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of going to museums and galleries and shows, and I guess one of the ways I make it entertaining for at least myself is when I look at a piece of art, thinking about what the sports equivalent could be. For a decent amount of time when I started the account, it was actually like captioning pieces of artwork, and those captions were sports related versus the like visual comparisons that I do now. And I did a handful of those in the captions, and I was finding myself being like, oh, this looks like Garrett Cole. And then I was like, all right, let me just find a picture of Garrett Cole and put it together. But I've worked in sports my entire career. I'm a huge sports fan. And yeah, whether it's art or just kind of everyday life, try to keep it interesting by applying that sports lens to things.
I love that. And it kind of started an Instagram account and you use this term, like stupid captions is what you use the term. And that's how this kind of came to fruition.
Yeah, I guess Instagram was becoming a thing and really didn't care to post pictures of myself wasn't really into it, but did think it was funny if I, posted pictures of people clipping their nails on the subway, or if I was, and there goes the drilling starting. Can you hear that, or
barely? It's fine. Yeah.
Let me close the window. Sorry.
I think it makes it more authentic.
Conhead. Yeah. So posting interesting things that I'd see in New York City, and then also go to museums, and figured anybody can open up somebody else's Instagram and see photos of art, but put that additional layer on there to make it comedic. And over time had friends basically tell me, oh, like you should make this its own thing, and eventually spun it off into an Instagram account, and then started focusing on, instead of just the captions, doing more of the side by sides, and kind of took off from there. So.
Well, what was it like? Because Instagram is kind of like evergreen content to a certain extent. So when you're able to go on Twitter and do it in real time, like as these things are taking place, what was that like to kind of see it take off while we're all watching a game, all watching a certain scenario go down, and then you have an art piece to kind of go with it?
Yeah, so I'd started up the Twitter only a few months after the Instagram, and I was sort of always making these in real time. I guess it took a while for people to notice and to follow the account. It's a lot more fun to do in the moment, especially because of at least on Twitter, at least because of the nature of how it operates, right? you've got something that goes viral, and then everybody's talking about it in that moment. So if you can do your part and create that unique piece of content and inject it into the conversation within a handful of minutes of the event happening, that's what starts to get it to spiral and get people talking. And if you do it a day or two later, it's more of like the Instagram style of, okay, this is sort of the museum, right? I'm taking that moment, I'm capturing it in history, and then just sort of throwing it on there. But if you can put it on Twitter within the time frame of it happening, that's when you get people talking. So
yeah, I think it's amazing because it's we're all watching the exact same event. And this sounds like, I think you mentioned this account really started taking off NBA playoffs 2022. Is that about right?
Yeah, it was. There've been like a few moments over the, almost, I guess, 5 years now, that have kind of bumped it up. I think very, very early on, Sarah Spain posted about it, and it went from like 500 followers to like 1,500, or I don't know, 1,000 to 2,000, something when it was really early, and I thought, oh, this is awesome. Kind of funny to think back. I think a majority of where it started to snowball, though, was from playoffs in 2022. And I guess it kind of makes sense with basketball being sort of this global sport that, especially if you look at like NBA Twitter, you have people from everywhere. And that's obviously when most people are tuned in. And from there, it kind of really started to jump. So, yeah, but like in the very early days, there was like my friends, my family. If I got a like on something from someone that didn't follow the account, I would like jump in their DMs and be like, "Hey, can you follow?"
Yeah,
trying to grow this thing organically, even though like I didn't really care. It was more just for the fun of it, and it's funny to think back now of, I guess, how large the audience has become.
yeah, it's massive. Is basketball, it kind of seems like that's the sport that you kind of lean into the most. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's maybe the nature of how basketball images tend to translate, right? You've got a lot of unique moments because you've got 10 people on the court at once, and there's all various iterations that could happen. Baseball tends to be harder, but also potentially funnier, just because, right, you get over the course of a baseball season a handful of times just things you've never ever seen before.
Yeah.
And those tend to play well. But just on the whole, from like a foundational level, basketball's probably the easiest sport to work with. So.
Yeah. And what was it like? Kind of, you get suggestions from people, and is that something that's overwhelming, or is it like the same things over and over again? Because I know notifications certainly happen when you have a big account like this, but how has that been, like having other people suggest things for you?
Yeah, so I'd say 99.9% of the time the suggestions they're just sports images, right?
Right.
Whenever people send in comparisons, they don't tend to be great, or they tend to be like very like basic art.
Basic. Like everybody's the Mona Lisa. Like, oh, we get it.
Or the screen comes up a bunch. And so with the people tagging or sending in the actual sports images, it's great because I mean, I watch a lot of sports, but I can't watch everything. And back in the day, I'd have to, really look through Twitter or, the internet to try to find interesting images, and, things would go viral. But, you've got like, the example that always comes up is when Draymond started choking Rudy Gobert. Like, I wasn't watching that game, and I wasn't on Twitter at the time. It was like, I think it was a night game, like 10:30. Walk my dog, getting ready for sleep, and I wouldn't have seen that if not for the fact that like my phone notifications started blowing up. Like, I would have done it the next day, but it wouldn't have been nearly as much fun as, I saw the notifications, started seeing all the images come through, and then made a few posts around that, and that only happened because people were tagging. And yes, I think it's a testament to the sort of community that follows the account that people know to send things in. And I can't do every image, and a lot of the times the things that people send aren't quite unique enough or interesting enough or tie into something that's happening. But oftentimes it's the ones that people maybe don't even think work well that when they send in end up popping off. So it's definitely much appreciated and helps me basically have eyeballs on everything at once.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. I love the aspect of if you like art, you'll appreciate this account. If you don't like art but love sports, you'll appreciate this account. And there was a quote from Bisa Butler, I believe that's her name. You showcased her work before. She told the New York Times, LJ brings art to the people. It often has been said that athletes' movements are as graceful as dancers. And LJ has gifted us his vision of athletic beauty and fine art. So you have somebody in the art world who's embracing sports, and I'm in a sports world just like you. So I don't really know how like the art world is, but it's kind of cool to show that you can cater to both sides and they're both going to have an appreciation of it. And then you have somebody who's in the art world who's appreciating it as well. That's hard to find that balance. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And Beast's work is incredible. Actually, she had a big exhibition in my hometown. Hometown has a very small art museum. This is 4 or 5 years ago now, which is how I found her work. But yeah, she basically makes like quilts that you could look like paintings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I've been running this account for a while now, and it certainly doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
And the only reason I keep it going is I have a handful of, I guess, reasons. It keeps me sharp and is fun, but another one of those is the aspect that you bring up of basically having people that maybe only live in the sports world start to appreciate art and learn more about art and realize that these two things that we often see as on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? You're either a jock or you're an art kid.
Mm-hmm.
They're not supposed to mix. And I think the account shows that we're not so different, and anybody can appreciate either side. Right? I get messages all the time from people saying, my spouse, my partner loves sports, and I love art, and this is the one thing that we can, both agree on and send each other. And so that kind of educational tool and the fact that it's opening people's minds to the other side is part of why I just keep it going. So.
Well, there's a self-taught aspect to like your love of art, and because you said you're a huge sports fan, maybe an amateur art person. But the thing is how are you self-taught? How do you appreciate art? And in that regard, is it just something that you stumble upon? Did you see a piece of art that stopped you in your tracks, or what happened there?
Yeah, I guess there are different things that someone could appreciate about art. For me, it's a little like sports, less on the visual side, but more on being able to see some of the threads that persist throughout the course of baseball history and art history, of seeing how an artist might pull from another artist who pulled from another artist and watching things evolve. And so when I go to a museum, sometimes I'll see a painting and I'll say, this is by this artist, but I recognize the work of another artist that they probably sampled from, and another artist and so it's sort of this view that I can that's ever growing and living, and that's part of what I appreciate about it. I guess the other piece is that a lot of these people have been dead for 300, 400 years, and yet you're there taking in their work, and it's as if you're kind of bringing somebody back alive, which is a little morbid to think about, but also at the same time makes you realize that what am I creating as a person, and is there something that I'm making that 300 years from now somebody might look at, which is kind of an odd way to think about it, but and I don't know, I appreciate the fact that a lot of the times people will go into a museum and say, I could do that, and they definitely can't. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And you didn't do that, and then it's starting to think like, why did somebody do that, and what were the things that they needed to learn in order to be able to execute on what they put together. And I guess the last piece, it's often like lost through the account, but a lot of these pieces of artwork are massive, right? And you don't really understand the scale unless you're seeing them in person. So there's something kind of larger than life that I appreciate about actually going to a museum or a gallery and seeing work in IRL. So
I'm glad that I can do that. Mentality is like every dude in my mentions after somebody screws up on the field. That can translate to art too. I'm glad that people, that's the one thing that they have in common is everybody thinks they can do it. It's like, then go do it.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Exactly.
Go ahead. Yeah. When you go to a museum, is there a specific type of art that you're drawn to? Or is it the actual just routine of going to the museum, or what's a day like for you when you go to a museum?
Yeah, it's funny. My my wife is not really into art, but she'll go with me oftentimes, and she gets excited. She's like, that's the most excited she ever sees me is when especially it's like if it's a new museum or like a new exhibition, because I kind of lock in and have my routine. There's art that I know doesn't usually work and that I don't really care for, like landscapes and portraits for the most part aren't all that important especially if I'm going to like a big museum and I have to budget my time or time and energy. But I do have a routine of basically going room to room, and I'll snap photos, and I won't look at the art in detail until after. So I'll snap all these photos, and then I'll dump them into this big folder that I have on my phone, and then I'll spend a bunch of time afterwards looking at each of the photos that I've taken. And in the past, I'd go and take pictures of the nameplates as well.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're all living in Google Photos, there's like Google Lens, and since they're all from museums or galleries, I'll index their photos. So
yeah,
after I don't have to basically do double the work of taking the nameplate, because I can just click Google Lens and it'll pull up the name of the artist and the year and the nameplate afterwards. So that saves a bunch of time and a bunch of space on my phone and in my folder. And yeah, it's sort of a blitz through any museum. And if I'm in like visiting a city, oftentimes I'll want to do like 3 or 4, if it's a big city, 3 or 4 museums in a day. So I go pretty quick through and then sort of study up after.
That's amazing. 3 and 4. I think people can get through 2 easily. 3 and 4, that's pretty impressive.
When I went to Munich, I think I did like 7 or 8 in one day.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I had like, I don't know, basically 24 hours to see as much as I could. So
well, at least nobody can say you're terrible at time management if you're getting all of that in 8. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I know we kind of talked about the basic Mona Lisa stuff, but with the Simone Biles, it was not just a visual image, but a GIF, whatever, of her during the Olympics. And so you compared that to the Mona Lisa, which everybody knows both of those people. But I saw on your website, you described it as 2 goats, essentially, which is such a brilliant thing. And so was it first starting off the fact that they are both so well known as 2 of the most decorated art and athletes? Did you start with that aspect, or just the fact that Simone looking at the camera looked a lot like Mona Lisa?
Yeah, so when it comes to paintings like the Mona Lisa or the Scream or paintings that everybody knows, you've got to, at least in my mind, for the account, you have to be pretty careful about when you deploy those and what they're used for. So with the Mona Lisa, you're not really going to get somebody that looks like her, right? Like you make that compare. If somebody physically looks like her, it's like the point of the Mona Lisa to me is the fact that, and I guess this is disputed, but celebrated for, looking in multiple directions at once. So when I saw the Simone clip, right, I watched her sort of her eyes shift. It's like, oh, that's, that could work. And then there's the added layer of basically everybody knows Simone Biles, everybody knows Mona Lisa. They're both, extremely celebrated and potentially controversial for some people. And I tried to make like a video. I don't really do videos, but if you're going to try to capture the eyes shifting, I tried to make a video of it, and it didn't quite work. So I just grabbed a still, and I think quote tweeted the video. But yeah, it's, I don't want to be using, the Mona Lisa for
Right.
just anybody. So definitely had that additional layer.
Yeah, that's nobody can argue with that, especially because of those layers. And were you working with NBC for this? No.
Just doing stuff on the Olympics on my own. I used to work at NBC on the Olympics.
Me too. I worked for NBC Sports Bay Area for about 3 years.
Nice. I guess I was with just NBC, the main NBC Olympics. I was a producer for London, and then helped run the app during Sochi. But yeah, the just on my own. The Olympics are near and dear, and chock full of content, especially for, you get sports that most folks don't pay attention to, 3, 4 every, all the other time when it's not the Olympics, and yet those moments go viral. So it's a lot of fun to be working with new sports during that time.
And as far as going viral is, I mean, you mentioned like this account doesn't pay the bills, but what's it like seeing some of these notifications and then like your followers blow up and, all the likes and all the shares, and what does that feel like?
It's cool. I mean, I'd be running the account, I think, if there were 100 people or, 100,000 or 1 million. And which is funny when people like, I on a constant basis get people in the mentions saying, you're using AI, you must be using AI. And like, to me, I don't know what the point of it would be if I was using AI to make the matchups, because the only reason I'm doing it is to, like, not the only reason, but a big part of it is just to sort of entertain myself and keep myself sharp and sort of help myself learn about art and, be exposed to more sports. And I feel like that's not something that I could get through essentially cheating. It would lose the fun, and it would lose that sort of hit of dopamine I get when I come up with that comparison. And so it's fun to, see the community grow and see the notifications. I think especially now where Twitter's sort of this kind of toxic, awful place. And the comment sections used to be fun, and you used to get like, quality stuff coming through. And now, like, on a majority of accounts, you'll click into a tweet that goes viral and it's just all bots and indistinguishable. And I think one of the things I appreciate with the community that's been built is the comment sections are 90-something% free of bots, and there's really no like toxicity. It's just sort of built a group of people that are, for all intents and purposes, normal. And that's fun. I don't think I'd keep the account if all of a sudden it was just, nonsense that was going on in the comment section. So it's kind of now my escape from the rest of Twitter, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's cool to see the audience grow, and I've been thinking of ways to, people are always like, oh, you have to monetize this, or you should do such and such, and just sort of being careful about what I do and what I want to do with growing it, because I think if it isn't a hobby and it turns into something more, then it probably wouldn't be as much fun. So just kind of balancing things.
How would AI even work in this aspect? Because I feel like AI would combine the images, right?
Yeah, I don't think it would work.
Yeah, I don't think it
Also
would.
funny. It's like if
What a lazy thing to say. Oh, that's AI. We're always blaming something. Like it drives me crazy.
like if I somehow had personally designed AI that could do something like this, it's funny to think that people would think I'd use it for
Yeah.
that. I'd like use it to be like a principal engineer at Google making 7 figures. Like AI is available to everybody, and it's not going to work for this. And the account's been around for much longer than like publicly available, like Chat GPT or anything. So I think it's people are, I don't know. That's also the part of the problem with Twitter is now everything on there is just AI and people like AI images and people getting ads for God knows what in the space.
Yeah.
So not great. So I guess part of, and I guess why it's fun to keep running is that it is all human driven and a person behind it. And I think AI for utility is important. So like one of the things I've done is I've made a Substack just to do like more long form and talking through the process a little bit. And one of the posts I made maybe a month or two ago was around AI, and there was a tweet that had gone viral. Somebody had said, I want AI to do my laundry and my dishes for me, so I have more time to focus on writing and art, not have AI do writing and art, so that I have more time to do dishes and laundry. And so it's the like AI for utility. Like I use Google Lens to save me from having to take that second photo of the nameplate, and this way, I save room in my phone, I save time. It doesn't contribute to the art factor of it, right? It's sort of this tool to help me versus like I can't imagine wanting to use a tool to do the art factor, because then it strips the human from the equation, and then it's not you doing anything. And then the other big is like all of these AI like image generators are oftentimes trained on data that isn't necessarily legal, right? They're taking people's work without giving them credit or proper sourcing, and there's a whole ethical issue there. So yeah, it's I'm all for the utility side of things, but as soon as it starts creeping into the things that humans should probably be doing, then got a problem with it. So
I would love if AI would fold my laundry and put it away. That's the one thing I hate more than anything. I'll do anything else around the house, but if AI could fold my laundry and put it away, I couldn't imagine how blissfully happy I would be.
Yeah, more time to do things that we
do write and art. Yeah. But here we are. I can't be creative if I'm always folding laundry. Yeah. The Substack was really cool to like watch you go through the creative process. Was that something? When did you start doing that throughout the entirety? Because that's where you mentioned both GOATs as far as Mona Lisa and Simone Biles. So what was it like to kind of walk through or have the person walk through the creative process with you?
It's been about a year, and it's fun to do more long form, just because Instagram and Twitter don't really give you the right canvas to explain things unless I start like doing threading them on Twitter, and just felt more right to put it into a social media platform that was purpose built to talk about things in more detail. So yeah, it's been fun. I do like a little newsletter every few weeks and talk about some things that I like in the sports world and the art world, and go on, I guess, little mini rants, and then also have some posts that go deeper into the process. If this was my full-time job, I'd probably spend a lot more time talking about like every post and breaking things down. But then my guess is that probably just gets overwhelming for people, and it's more fun to, on occasion, go a little bit deeper versus every single time. So
Yeah. And we talked about how basketball was kind of the sport you leaned on. Did you mention baseball might be more difficult? Why is that?
yeah, I mean, you get the same view on every single play to start, right? It's always your batter and your pitcher and your catcher, right? Your batter, and then it evolves from there. But sometimes the camera doesn't even leave that view, and it's sort of the same thing over and over. But in the opposite end of, you've probably seen everything you could possibly see in a basketball game kind of unfold until you get like the fights of Gobert and Draymond. Whereas in baseball, on any given day, you might get something super weird, and right. We just had the best game of all time with Ohtani. That could happen, I guess, on any given day. So there's a lot more unique permutations to baseball, and I think during the playoffs it becomes a lot more fun too.
Definitely.
Season when everybody's locked in, and I mean that's kind of the case for all the sports. Like, I don't know, the like WNBA now, and in playoffs, I'm excited for a bunch of those images to sort of hit the timeline and go viral. And that's the other thing. Like, it's hard now for me to go out of my way to find stuff, and oftentimes people are locked in when their sport reaches the postseason, and then in turn I get more of those images. So yeah, I mean baseball's fun. It's often just the lowbrow stuff that pops off from it. But
I will say though, you're right. Like when something weird in baseball happens, it's very, very weird. It's like this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So that's always kind of cool. And I love postseason. I love live tweeting postseason baseball. There's literally nothing like it. I'm obsessed. Speaking of baseball, who is your baseball team?
I'm a Yankees fan.
Okay. We shouldn't be talking. You just swept us. Why didn't you tell me this? My producer should have told me.
I'm more of a baseball fan in general. But just kind of, I've always been a Yankees fan. Can't change it. Hasn't been very good recently, but I don't know. This could be a good year. We'll see how the postseason unfolds. But
I think you're going to be okay.
Maybe better than the A's.
Yeah, I mean, I will say when it comes to the A's, we're not making it. I should say they're making it very difficult for a lot of playoff teams. This series aside. But Kotz mentioned that he believes Aaron Judge is the MVP. Let's talk about the A's, though. I want to preface, I appreciate a fantasy baseball team, but I cover these guys, so I don't give a shit about your fantasy team because these guys are humans, and I love covering them. But you did mention you have Lawrence Butler, JJ Bleday, and I believe Mason Miller on your fantasy team. So you're stacked in and of itself right there. What about these guys, besides the obvious, made you want to have them on your team?
Yeah, so I'm in and again, I guess as you preface, nobody cares about your fantasy team. I'm in I think we're 16-team league with 20 keepers and 40 people on the roster. We used to do it by email, and you could draft anybody. So you could draft any player so long as they sign with that team within that calendar year. So you could draft guys coming over from foreign leagues. You could draft kids in rookie ball. You could draft college players so long as they sign. So you have to really be up on sort of everything in baseball, which is fun. And so I've been in this league forever. And yeah, Lawrence Butler has definitely turned himself into a keeper, one of my top 20, which is great. But also I've a longtime player of out of the park baseball, which is basically like this. How do I explain it? It's like everything you might get in a video game minus some of the video game components, but going really deep into like you can change anything, start at any point in time in history, and basically be the general manager of a team. And the A's have been my team for a number of years, so I've taken a liking to the Oakland players. It's been fun to have them be on my fantasy team and then play in that game. So
I appreciate the JJ Bleday love. Not that he's not getting enough love and attention, but considering he just told me the other day, like defensively, he's night and day from this season compared to last. So I appreciate that. Because, I mean, nobody's going to argue with you having an all-star closer on your team and then what Law's doing. And then if Brent Rooker were there, like nobody would argue with that. But I appreciate the Bleday love.
he's a Vandy boy. So I went to...
He is a Vandy boy in all the ways you could be a Vandy boy.
So I went to Vanderbilt, and there's a special place in my heart for any of the Vandy grads that
Who's your favorite Vandy baseball player?
Probably maybe Sonny Gray. I was in a few classes with him. He's a funny guy.
Former A, yeah.
Former A, yeah. Pedro Alvarez, David Price. I guess we're like kind of the OG Tim Corbin guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always fun to see a Vandy player make the majors. And Bleday, I guess at one point everybody thought he'd be really good, and then
first rounder, yeah,
tough years, and it's fun to see him actually be a contributor and prove that he has a place in the league. So
yeah, I have a Tony Kemp signed bat right behind me. He's probably my favorite Vandy player ever.
He's a lot of fun.
He is. You know, when it comes to this account, making it get bigger, what could you possibly do? Because it's obviously very successful, and it's a lot like baseball. The numbers don't lie. Like, it's showing the success right there. What do you ultimately want from this account?
Yeah, so I don't think I care about making it bigger in the sense of more people following. I think that just happen naturally. It is fun to see it increment, and sometimes like a post will go viral and I'll wake up and there'll be, I don't know, like 10,000 more people following, which is cool. I guess I think more of it of making it bigger and expanding out maybe some of the things that I do with it. Like I've started thinking about how do I potentially turn this into a book. A lot of people write in like, oh, you should make
That would be an amazing coffee table book.
Yeah. So working through that, there's a lot of like legal and licensing pieces to it. Thinking through like prints, and then ultimately, how does the account tie into maybe the fine art world? Which, you know, you're not just printing something on a a piece of paper and like a poster and getting it framed. How do you do more, for lack of a better term, legitimate and experiment with like new techniques that might make something unique? So things like lenticular printing, which I guess there are a few different ways you do it, but as you move across a piece, how does it morph from one image to another? And looking at artists that use lenticular printing in their artwork and thinking through how does some of this translate to that. I mean, outside of that, it's I don't know, I feel like Elon Musk has made it toxic to have subscriptions on Twitter, but hopefully he forks it over to somebody that makes it a little bit of a happier place, and then I'd probably turn those on and make bonus content. But at the end of the day, I don't really like gatekeeping any of the content. So yeah, I don't know. I like making the posts, and like I mentioned, a handful of things that bring the post, I guess, to life, and what's the right way to do that.
Yeah. I often think like how I thought I was the coolest person in the world when I had a blue check mark on Twitter. And now I think, God, every day I don't have a blue check mark on Twitter.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah, it's definitely a different place. But I've always had the mindset of Twitter. Like I've been on Twitter for, God, maybe more than 15 years now, with like my personal account. I've always had the view that the inmates kind of run the asylum, no matter who's in charge, right? So it's gotta stay strong and hope we get better leadership, I guess. But at the end of the day, it's the people's platform and not whoever is trying to run into the ground at the moment. So. Yeah,
and there's a understanding and kind of a beauty behind that, but if you give a toddler the keys to the city, that's what's going to happen. There'll be finger paint everywhere is what's ultimately going to happen. Last one before I let you go. Is there an athlete or a scenario, anything like that you're dying to do?
So it's funny, during the summer, things get really quiet. This summer was awesome, right? You had the Olympics, you had Euros going on. There's just a lot of energy and a lot of content to work from. But most summers it's just very sort of slow, and you just have to wait for that viral moment. And then oftentimes I'll dip back into historic photos. So I think this maybe potentially ties into if I do a coffee table book, it's starting to look at old photos that I could do and just post now, but then people might say, what's this have to do with what's going on? And so there are a lot of older photos that I think would package really well with something like a book or some of the Substack stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, looking forward to sort of doing that side of things, because I didn't have a chance over the last basically year and a half, because it just hasn't died down at all. So
I did lie. I have one more question.
Sure.
I know there are people who are memeable, they have a face that's very memeable. Is there an athlete or a scenario that's easy to kind of turn into art or compare to very artistic-y, I guess is the word?
I'm trying to think if for baseball, I guess Altuve always comes up as
that's a good one.
Doing stupid stuff and just kind of in unique scenarios. Plus, I guess him.
Joey Votto comes to mind, not just because I'm a huge Votto fan, but he would just always do random things.
Yeah, he's definitely memeable. The
Super memeable.
To have somebody that there has to be something that's unique about them too, potentially. Mm-hmm. It's I'm not the tallest person in the world, but Altuve being short, you could play off that in certain cases. For basketball, it's always been Draymond. He seems like every year there are a handful.
He's very
He just does something that you've never seen before. And then in basketball too, with dunks, Ant is huge because dunks always play well. I'm trying to think in baseball. I wish Judge was a little more exciting.
I think if you weren't on the Yankees, he would be. I think he was told earlier on by a certain bald outfielder to not be very animated and stuff. I think he's low. I mean, he's from the 209. There's a specific vibe that you get from the Stockton area. I think he was just told to reel it in a little bit if you're representing not just the Yankees but the entire sport.
Which is a Yankees fan, I appreciate that he. I don't need anything extra from him, given what he does on the field. But from an account standpoint, it'd be fun if he was, I don't know, had a little bit more outward facing personality. But yeah, it's also it comes from where when you least expect it. I guess I don't know, for the NFL season, Will Levis these first 3 weeks has had more moments than anybody could possibly wish for. So that's been exciting to work from, and he came out of kind of nowhere. So I'm sure there'll be,
and that's kind of fun. You have one guy who is the art guy throughout the NFL season because he's always doing something. I love that.
Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't think of it right. But it's good.
He will now.
Good for business. So
that's kind of funny because a lot of the times it's I'm going to be a meme now. Now they're going to be I'm going to be on Art But Make It Sports.
Yeah, sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes not. So
yeah, I know.
But yeah.
LJ, this was awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was LJ Rader, the amazing mastermind behind Art But Make It Sports. 716,000 followers between Twitter and Instagram. A new appreciation for art if you will. I live in the Bay Area. I don't go to museums. I want to go to museums. Maybe I'll have a new appreciation for all of that. Great to hear from him and just to see how some of these awesome accounts come to fruition. There's a certain creative mindset that comes with them. And it's just cool to see how a lot of these pieces come to life. So thank you to LJ for his time. Thank you to you for listening to Short and to the Point. Follow us wherever you get podcasts, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.